There was once an old saying whispered among philosophers: the greatest battles are never fought with swords, but in silence. Yet modern life teaches the opposite. It teaches you to remain busy, to keep talking, to keep scrolling, to keep proving yourself, to surround yourself with noise until you can no longer hear your own thoughts. And then it wonders why so many people feel lost. Perhaps the greatest fear in human history has never been loneliness. It has been being left alone with ourselves. The Stoics understood something that most people never discover. The person who cannot sit quietly with his own mind will spend his entire life running from it. That is why people fear silence, because silence removes distraction. And when distraction disappears, truth begins to speak. You suddenly notice the dreams you've abandoned, the habits destroying your future, the people draining your energy, the excuses you've repeated so many times that they've begun to sound like facts. Silence is uncomfortable, not because it is empty, because it is honest. Machiavelli observed that kingdoms often collapse long before enemies arrive. They decay from within. So do people. No one destroys a man whose mind remains disciplined. He is first conquered by distraction, by comfort, by endless entertainment, by becoming so occupied with everyone else's life that he forgets to build his own. Look around. Everywhere you go, someone is trying to capture your attention. Your phone vibrates. The television speaks. Advertisements demand your eyes. Social media competes for every spare second of your day. Because attention is power. The person who controls your attention gradually influences your decisions, and the person who influences your decisions quietly shapes your future. Ancient warriors understood this. Before entering battle, they withdrew from the world, not because they feared people, because they respected focus. A sword is not sharpened in the middle of chaos. It is sharpened away from the battlefield. So is the human mind. History quietly repeats the same lesson. The greatest thinkers often disappeared before changing the world. The wisest leaders spent long hours alone before making decisions that shaped nations. The strongest minds were rarely formed in crowds. They were forged in solitude. Yet today, people mistake isolation for failure. If someone spends a weekend alone, others assume something must be wrong. If someone refuses every invitation, they're called antisocial. If someone chooses books over parties, discipline over popularity, reflection over constant conversation, people begin asking, "Are you okay?" Perhaps the better question is, why are we so afraid of being alone? Because isolation exposes the one person we spend the least time understanding, ourselves. There is a story from ancient wisdom about a young student who traveled across mountains to learn from a master. When he finally arrived, he expected secrets about power, about influence, about success. Instead, the master pointed toward a quiet cave. "Live there." The student frowned. For how long? Until the sound of your own thoughts no longer frightens you. Days became weeks. Weeks became months. At first, the silence felt unbearable. He replayed old arguments, old failures, old embarrassments. His mind wandered like an untamed horse. But slowly, something extraordinary happened. The noise settled. The anger softened. The fear weakened. For the first time in his life, he could hear himself clearly. When he returned, the master smiled. "You have learned the first lesson." What lesson? The world cannot manipulate a person who has already made peace with his own mind. That is the hidden gift of isolation. It strips away performance, it removes masks, it forces you to meet the person you've been avoiding. Many people spend decades trying to impress strangers while remaining complete strangers to themselves. Isolation changes that. It asks difficult questions. Who are you when nobody is watching? What do you truly believe when no one is applauding? What kind of life are you building when comparison disappears? These questions are uncomfortable, but every meaningful transformation begins with discomfort. Perhaps that is why the eagle flies above the storm, not to escape the world, but to see it clearly. And perhaps your greatest breakthrough is waiting on the other side of silence.
There is a reason the strongest trees in the forest grow far from the noise. No one applauds them, no one encourages them, no one notices them. Yet year after year, they continue reaching toward the sky. Not because someone is watching, because growth has become their nature. Human beings often do the opposite. We wait for recognition before we begin. We seek encouragement before we take the first step. We measure our value through applause instead of progress. That is why isolation feels so uncomfortable. It removes the audience. And once the audience disappears, only two things remain: your habits and your character. The Stoics believed that a person's true nature is revealed not during moments of celebration, but during moments of solitude. Anyone can appear disciplined when others are watching. Anyone can seem confident when life is easy. Anyone can speak about greatness. But what do you do when no one expects anything from you? Do you still wake before sunrise? Do you still study? Do you still train? Do you still keep the promises you made to yourself? Or does discipline disappear the moment the crowd is gone? That answer is your true identity. Machiavelli understood another uncomfortable truth. People often wear masks, not because they are evil, but because they fear rejection. They become whatever earns approval, different among friends, different at work, different online, different in private. Eventually, they forget who they really are. Isolation removes every mask. When you are alone, there is no reputation to protect, no performance to maintain, no applause to chase. Only you, standing face to face with yourself. At first, this feels frightening. You begin noticing how often you've lied to yourself. I'll start next week. I don't have enough time. I'm waiting for the right opportunity. One by one, those excuses lose their power, because in solitude, there is no one left to convince. There is only truth. Ancient monks understood this. Before offering wisdom to others, they withdrew into mountains, deserts, and forests. Not because they hated people, but because they knew a cloudy mind cannot guide another soul. They first mastered themselves. Then, they returned to serve the world. Modern society often mistakes this withdrawal for weakness. But consider the blacksmith. When he wishes to forge an unbreakable sword, he does not leave it exposed. He places it into fire, then strikes it, again, and again, and again. The steel does not become stronger because it avoided hardship. It becomes stronger because hardship transformed it. Isolation is that fire. It burns away dependency. It burns away insecurity. It burns away the endless need to compare yourself with everyone else. And when the fire is finished, what remains is stronger than what entered it. Have you noticed something strange? The loudest people often accomplish the least. They announce every goal, every dream, every plan. Yet months later, nothing has changed. Meanwhile, the quiet person disappears for a season. No announcements, no explanations, no performance. Then, one day, they return. Healthier, wiser, stronger, more successful. The crowd calls it luck. The wise call it preparation. Never underestimate what can happen when someone spends 6 months building instead of boasting. This is why the eagle spends so much time alone. It does not fly with every flock. It protects its energy.
It chooses its direction carefully. It understands something that many people never do. Constant company can become constant distraction. Not every invitation deserves your attention. Not every conversation deserves your time. Not every friendship deserves permanent access to your peace. Sometimes, the greatest act of self-respect is learning to walk away. Not with anger, not with revenge, but with quiet certainty that your future deserves your full attention. Because there comes a season when growth demands distance. Distance from noise, distance from negativity, distance from the version of yourself that keeps asking for permission to become extraordinary. Isolation is not the destination. It is the workshop, the place where ordinary people become uncommon. And by the time the world notices your transformation, the work has already been done.
By the time the world notices your transformation, the work has already been done. History rarely remembers where greatness was built. It remembers only where greatness was revealed. People watched Alexander lead armies, but they never saw the lonely nights spent studying strategy. They admired Marcus Aurelius as an emperor, but few speak of the hours he spent writing to himself, trying to master his own mind before ruling an empire. They remember Leonardo da Vinci's masterpieces, yet forget the countless silent evenings when no one believed history was being written. The world celebrates performance. Wisdom celebrates preparation. Machiavelli knew that a ruler who constantly surrounded himself with voices would eventually lose his own. Advice is valuable. Dependence is dangerous. There comes a moment when every leader must leave the crowd and think alone. Because crowds have a strange habit. They amplify emotion. They weaken reason. Fear spreads quickly. So does excitement. But truth usually speaks in whispers. That is why powerful decisions are rarely made in noisy rooms. They are born in quiet ones. The Stoics believed that the mind should become like a calm lake. When the water is disturbed, it reflects nothing clearly. When the water becomes still, even the stars appear. The same is true for your thoughts. If your mind is constantly stirred by comparison, arguments, notifications, and endless opinions, how can you expect to see your purpose clearly? Stillness is not the absence of movement. It is the presence of clarity. Many people confuse being alone with being lonely. They are not the same. Loneliness says, I need someone to complete me. Isolation says, I am becoming someone worth knowing. There is enormous power in that difference, because once you stop searching for people to fill the emptiness inside you, you begin filling it yourself. With knowledge, with discipline, with purpose, with peace. Ancient warriors often disappeared before battle, not because they feared their enemy, because they respected their own mind. They sharpened their weapons, steadied their breathing, prepared their spirit. They understood that panic begins in crowds. Confidence is cultivated alone. Look closely at nature. The diamond forms under pressure, hidden beneath the earth. The pearl develops inside darkness. The eagle builds its nest high above the noise. Nature repeats the same lesson again and again. Everything valuable requires a season unseen. So why do we expect our own growth to be different? Perhaps the reason your life feels delayed is because you're trying to bloom before your roots have grown. Roots grow in darkness, not in applause. Your character grows in solitude, not in popularity. The strongest version of yourself will never be created by constant validation. It will be created by quiet consistency. Reading another chapter when no one expects you to. Training one more hour when nobody is watching. Refusing distractions that promise pleasure but steal your future. The world will never applaud those moments, yet those moments create the person the world eventually applauds. There is another truth that few people are willing to accept. Not everyone deserves unlimited access to your life. Some people inspire you,
Others slowly drain you. Some challenge you to grow. Others encourage you to remain exactly where you are.
Wisdom is learning the difference. Machiavelli never suggested isolating yourself because people are enemies. He understood something simpler. Energy is limited. Attention is valuable. Time is irreplaceable. Protect them accordingly. There are seasons for conversation, and there are seasons for disappearing. Do not fear those seasons, because every caterpillar must disappear before it returns with wings. Perhaps your silence is not a sign that you're falling behind. Perhaps it is evidence that you are preparing for a life the crowd cannot yet imagine.
Perhaps your silence is not a sign that you're falling behind. Perhaps it is evidence that you are preparing for a life the crowd cannot yet imagine. There comes a moment when every season of isolation must end, not because the work is finished, the work is never truly finished, but because the person who entered isolation no longer exists. A new person walks back into the world, calmer, wiser, stronger, not louder, not more arrogant, simply more difficult to shake. People will notice. Some will say, "You've changed." Smile, because they are right. The tree that survives winter does not apologize for blooming in spring. Transformation has always confused those who refuse to change. There is an ancient saying, the bamboo spends years growing beneath the earth before it rises toward the sky. During those years, people walking above the ground believe nothing is happening. They see only empty soil, but beneath the surface, thousands of roots are spreading, preparing, strengthening, waiting. Then one season, the bamboo rises with astonishing speed. People call it sudden success. There was nothing sudden about it. The invisible years made the visible moment possible. Your life is no different. Perhaps nobody notices your discipline today. Perhaps no one understands why you've become quieter, why you read more, why you spend less time seeking approval, why you've disappeared from places that once consumed your attention. Let them misunderstand. Roots are not meant to impress people. They are meant to support greatness. Machiavelli understood that the strongest fortress is built long before war begins. The wise person prepares before necessity demands it. While others waste peaceful seasons, the disciplined quietly become stronger. Then when hardship arrives, they are ready. The Stoics carried the same wisdom. They did not wait for suffering to build courage. They built courage before suffering appeared. That is why storms revealed their strength instead of creating it. Remember this. Pressure never creates character. Pressure reveals it. If you spend your days chasing comfort, difficulty will expose your weakness. But if you spend your days chasing discipline, difficulty will reveal your power. One of the greatest mistakes people make is returning too early. The seed does not leave the soil until it is ready. The butterfly does not force its way from the cocoon before its wings are strong enough to fly. Nature understands timing. Human beings often do not. We become impatient. We want recognition before preparation, results before habits, victory before sacrifice. But wisdom whispers, stay hidden a little longer, learn one more lesson, read one more book, train one more hour, master one more weakness, because every extra day spent preparing becomes an advantage when the world finally sees you. And when you do return, return quietly. Do not announce your transformation. Do not argue with those who doubted you. Do not seek revenge against those who underestimated you. The strongest response has always been the same: results. Let your peace confuse those who expected anger. Let your discipline silence those who expected excuses. Let your success answer questions you never needed to answer yourself. The eagle never flies back to convince the crows that it belongs among the clouds. It simply flies higher. The mountain never lowers it
Because someone standing in the valley cannot understand its height. It simply stands. That is the final lesson of isolation. Isolation was never about escaping the world. It was about escaping the version of yourself that needed the world to feel complete. Once you discover peace within yourself, approval loses its power. Criticism loses its sting. Failure loses its terror. Because your confidence is no longer borrowed from applause. It is built upon promises you kept to yourself. So if life has placed you in a season of solitude, do not curse it. Use it.
build in it, heal in it, grow in it. Because one day you will look back and realize the loneliest season of your life was also the season that made you unstoppable. Welcome to the inner mirror, because history remembers the victories, but wisdom remembers the solitude that created them. Until the next reflection, look within.